Well, if it isn't the return of the Golden State Warriors, if it isn't the return of the real Golden State Warriors with the most dominant basketball player on the planet in Steph Curry. He may be older now, but he's still that guy, and he's proving it now that Jimmy Butler is on board next to him, another Batman by his side, and the Warriors are starting to now look like a team that nobody wants to see come playoffs. This is so crazy, and this is something that I never thought I'd be doing this season, but I'm making this video while the Warriors game is still going on because the Warriors went into the fourth quarter with a 30-point lead, a 30-plus point lead. And as I say this, Kevin Knox just threw down a monstrous alley-oop slam from Guy Santos, and the Warriors right now have a 34-point lead. Yes, they're playing against the lowly Charlotte Hornets, but I don't care. All I care about is watching the Warriors play great basketball, a great brand of basketball, and a great team is supposed to take care of teams like this completely and utterly, and that's what the Warriors are doing, and that's what they have been doing. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Before we continue, be sure to hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, and that like button if you haven't already, so that this video can go out to all the Warriors fans out there. Let's get right to it. You know, we all pray for times like this where we get to just sit down, relax, and enjoy Steph Curry dominate the game of basketball and watch the Warriors thrive. I mean, that's why I started tuning in all those years ago, is because it was fun to watch Steph Curry play the game of basketball. The Warriors are now 6-1 in the Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry era, and every game matters moving forward, but the Warriors are now just half a game behind the Clippers for that 6th seed. They're closer than ever to a playoff berth with 20 plus games still left to go. After tonight's game, the Warriors will be on the road for the next 5 games, and they're all very, very winnable games. Even against the Knicks, with a team like this and the way the Warriors have it going, it almost feels like the sky is the limit at this point. And even though this was a boring blowout win, I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did to the fullest, because we're not used to the Warriors taking care of business in this manner. We're used to the Warriors having to play down to the wire against just about any team and every single team that's in the league, good or bad, even if it's a bottom ranked team, even if it's the Utah Jazz, even if it's against the Raptors. It just doesn't matter. When the Warriors are not operating on all cylinders, they're capable of losing to any team in the league. The Lakers and the Mavs are playing right now as I speak, and depending on what happens in that game, if the Lakers are able to take care of business against the Mavs, the Warriors will have a half game lead against the Mavs, and they'll be just a half game behind the Timberwolves and the Clippers. And if the Warriors can overtake both of those teams at some point during this road stretch, then we can start talking about the possibility of this team catching up to some of those other guys and the 5th seed and possibly even the 4th seed. Obviously, a lot of that also hinges on what happens with those teams that are up in those standings as well. We'll keep tabs on this situation for the remainder of the season. But the Warriors can only control their own destiny at this point, and it's looking better than ever. I was wondering how the matchup between Draymond Green and Mark Williams would turn out. Mark Williams is a giant dude, a dude with a 7'6" wingspan and a standing reach of 9'9". And it just didn't really matter. Draymond mostly outplayed the guy, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and just 23 minutes of play. Needless to say, the starters didn't have to play a whole lot of minutes in this game. Jimmy Butler didn't even reach 20 minutes in this game. And the game is still ongoing. It's a 38-point game with 4 minutes left to go. Kevin Knox has 10 points on 4 of 5 shooting from the field. I have to say, I've been talking about the Warriors' need to go and pick up another guy with some size, some wingspan, and some defensive capability. I don't think that Kevin Knox is necessarily known for his defense. He's more of an offensive guy, but he is 6'7", does have a 6'11" wingspan, and almost feels like a taller version of Buddy Hield in a way. He does have the ability to shoot the 3, does have the ability to score the ball. And if he can be capable for the Warriors from a defensive standpoint, that's another wing on their bench that they could use, because I just don't trust Buddy Hield come playoffs. I think a great basketball team should use Buddy Hield as a 3rd string option. But now that the Warriors mostly have a full complementary of players, Steve Kerr has figured some things out. And I've always been a guy, whenever Steve Kerr does do the right things, I give him credit where credit is due. Now, aside from that starting lineup that's been fixed up, goodness gracious, no more Buddy Hield and Quinton Post combination in that starting lineup. And they're getting off to more affordable starts, and tonight in particular in that third quarter, they really blew the game open, that starting unit. But Kerr has figured out two distinct rotations. One that is for Steph Curry and one that is for Jimmy Butler. One is a Steph Curry centric lineup and the other is a Butler centric lineup. We all know the Butler centric lineup by now. It's that unit to begin the second quarter and the fourth quarter where it's Pods, Moody, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Quinton Post. That's been a very cohesive unit ever since Steve put that lineup together. Jimmy is the primary creator, Jimmy and Draymond are the facilitators, Moody and Pods are the scorers, and Post is the spacer. But something else I've been wanting to see for a long time and something that I've been pleading for is for Steph Curry-centric minutes for segments of each quarters. And we're starting to see that now. So initially the starting lineup starts the game out and then Jimmy Butler, Pods, these guys take a seat. And then you have a lineup that is centered around looking for Steph Curry before he takes a seat in that first and the third quarter. And tonight the Warriors were off to an 11-14 deficit. But with a lineup of Steph Curry, Buddy Hield, GP2, Guy Santos, and Kevon Looney. And I don't necessarily love it because Buddy Hield is in there, GP2 is in there, and you have this tiny 3-guard lineup situation. But obviously GP2 is capable of playing bigger than his size as long as you're not putting him at the 4. And now that Guy Santos is at the power forward spot next to Kevon Looney, now you have these fundamental guys that are out there to do the intangibles, set the hard screens, hustle for loose balls, go for steals without gambling, going for every rebound, offensive and defensive, and constantly looking for Steph Curry. And so we had this little segment where Steph Curry scored 8 points in the blink of an eye. He started the game 0 for 4. He was looking at that hand early on, and that was concerning because apparently he was looking at it in the previous game as well. I wonder if he did a little bit of aggravating of that sprained thumb again. Really hope not. But Guy Santos came into the equation and immediately changed the game. Just being able to steal the ball in transition, being able to grab an offensive rebound, and these hustle plays led to second chance opportunities for the Warriors, and that's when Steph Curry started to get it going. And in the span of a minute and a half, again, Steph Curry scores 8 points in the blink of an eye. That's what you call a Curry flurry. You have a generational scorer like Steph Curry, you have to have segments per quarter where you're strictly looking for Steph Curry to get on the ball and do what he does best. And you gotta do that while protecting your lineup defensively, making sure that you have a defensive unit around him so that you can create that separation, knowing that Steph Curry is gonna get you those buckets, but you're also able to get stops at the same time. It's useless if you're scoring with those Steph Curry-centric minutes, but you can't get any stops because your lineups are too small. 4-guard lineups, Draymond at the 5. These are the things that have been happening throughout the course of this season and last season, and these are the things that I've been pleading for the Warriors to stop. And oh my goodness, I'm looking at the score right now. The game is about to be over. The Warriors are up by 46 points in this game. Unbelievable. So yes, with that Steph-centric lineup, with a good defense behind him, the Warriors were able to go on a 13-2 run. What was an 11-14 deficit turned into a 24-16 lead. Now let me just talk about the impact of guys like Kevon Looney, GP2, and Guy Santos for a second. These are the type of guys that you are going to need in the playoffs. Just can't be scorers and shooters and all these types of players all day and night. It's gotta be some connective players, guys who will do all the dirty work, guys who will go hustle for every loose ball, guys that will fight for every offensive rebound, guys that will play for the best player on the team, that being Steph Curry. And obviously Kevon Looney is that indispensable big man that is going to fight down low against all the elite bigs come playoffs. And then you have GP2, who is literally the best POA the Warriors have left on their roster. You don't win titles without guys like that connecting your lineups in the in-between segments of each quarters. Those segments can make or break your basketball team. And you guys know I have been pleading for more Guy Santos minutes throughout the course of the season that connects the Warriors in a way that a guy like Buddy Hield never could. Those 3 guys were really vital in making sure the Warriors are able to create separation in the first half of this game. To end the second quarter was a little wonky. Steve Kerr continued to run with that Steph-centric lineup, except he replaced Kevon Looney with Draymond. And the thing is, these lineups are very nuanced in terms of each player's roles whenever you throw out certain lineups. And that Steph-centric lineup works better when it's Kevon Looney at the center spot instead of Draymond at the center spot. Because when Draymond is at the center spot, now you have to account for the fact that there's a 3-guard lineup and the biggest guy on the floor is Guy Santos. See, that 3-guard lineup with Steph Curry, GP2, and Buddy Hield is much more palatable when you have a guy like Kevon Looney, who's basically the only one who's capable of holding down lineups that are a little bit smaller than necessary. But when Draymond is in there, as good as Draymond still can be, it can't really compensate for the presence of a guy like Buddy Hield. And once again, Buddy Hield closes the second quarter of this game, and mostly in the final 2.5 minutes of the game, he was a disaster. The Warriors would have had a 20-plus point lead going into the second half of the game if it wasn't for Buddy Hield. Let me show you what I mean. It started in transition where GP2 got the ball to Buddy Hield, but he flares out to the left corner and then throws up a shot, a contested one, and he ends up airballing it. Next thing you know, Draymond is in a 2-on-1 situation defensively, and he is somehow able to stop that 2-on-1 transition and gets the ball to Buddy Hield, who doesn't see Josh Green sprinting towards him, and he just turns the ball over right away. And then the next possession down, he falls asleep on Josh Green, and Josh Green cans a 3 in his face. And then a couple of possessions later, everybody is doing their rotations, but Buddy Hield just cannot get out to Josh Green on time, and Josh Green cans another 3-point shot in his face. I mean, how many bad plays in a row are we talking about here? And all of that happened in the final 2.5 minute stretch of that second quarter. He really and truly can destroy the momentum of the Warriors single-handedly. And I remain baffled by Steve Kerr's desire to absolutely close with a lineup that includes Buddy Hield to end every second quarter. They're getting away with it against some of these bad teams and depleted teams, but against the better teams and fully rostered teams, these little momentum breakers for the Warriors is going to give an advantage to that other team, and it's going to make the game much closer than it should be. And yes, he played well for the remainder of this game in garbage time, but that's obviously not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to the long-term effects of using Buddy Hield too much. Having said that, the starting lineup was brilliant tonight. Steph Curry had a couple of blunders in terms of turning the ball over unnecessarily at times, but he was absolutely thriving with that lineup that I brought up. Now Steve has figured out a Steph-centric lineup and a Butler-centric lineup, and the Warriors are really finding a great balance of 3 different lineups: the starting lineup, the Curry-centric lineups, and the Butler-centric lineup. Yeah, look at the plus-minus of that starting unit. It's just absolutely incredible tonight. Both Moses Moody and Brandon Podziemski were hyper-efficient in this game. And shout out to Brandon Podziemski, who turned 22 years old today. But yes, other than that, the biggest question now remains, what happens when Jonathan Kuminga comes back into the equation? We're all assuming that when Kuminga comes back into this picture, he's going to add onto what they're doing, and he's going to make the situation even better than where they already are, which is 6-1 in the Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry era. But as I just finished talking about, Steve Kerr has finally figured out 2 really viable combinations for the Curry-centric lineups and the Butler-centric lineups. So where does Kuminga come into the picture at this point? I mean, that Butler-centric lineup has been so good to begin the second and the fourth quarters. I just don't see how you mess with the chemistry of that unit and take somebody out of the equation. Can't take Post out of that lineup because he's a key personnel in that lineup and he's a sniper. So that leaves Pods or Moody. Most of the time over the years, when it comes to choosing between Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga, they've had to choose Kuminga every time, and Moses Moody gets screwed out of the picture. But guess what? Moses Moody is now 10-0 when he's in that starting lineup. So is it really fair and is it really right to sacrifice Moses Moody's minutes now because Kuminga needs to get back into the picture? Or do you take out Pods out of the equation and run some wonky lineup of Moody, Butler, Kuminga, Draymond, and Post? I just don't know. And needless to say, Kuminga is going to be coming off the bench. So then is he going to interfere in the Curry-centric lineup where everybody is, doing the fundamental things that they need to be doing to ensure that a Curry flurry happens? Guy Santos is finally getting a regular role. Is he now going to be taken out of the rotation in favor of Jonathan Kuminga, who in that scenario has to go back to playing the power forward spot? And I'm sorry, he just does not do power forward things. Or does he end up coming in for Buddy Hield, which seems unlikely given Steve Kerr's continued obsession with the guy, or does Kuminga eat up the minutes of GP2? Then it will be a lineup that looks something like Steph Curry, Buddy Hield, Jonathan Kuminga, Guy Santos, and Kevon Looney. And honestly, that has a path to work as well. Of course, that's also completely unfair to GP2, who just had a marvelous game in this one. I just think all of this would be so much easier if we can just pretend that Buddy Hield is not on this roster. Yes, I'm just really not sure how Steve is going to incorporate Jonathan Kuminga back into this situation and compromise or sacrifice somebody else and get them out of the rotation so that Kuminga can get back into the picture and play like, I don't know, 25 plus minutes per game possibly. To be completely real with you, this truly is a make or break situation for Kuminga. If Kuminga can come into this picture and help the Warriors reach the next level from where they already are, oh my goodness. I mean, that is the ideal scenario. If that doesn't happen, well, the next step is for him to come into the picture and basically be a neutral where the team necessarily isn't taking the next step, but they're not taking a step down either. They're kind of staying where they are and continuing on this winning trajectory with him now incorporated into the picture. The worst case scenario is that somehow his presence makes things a little bit worse somehow, and the Warriors aren't as good or as cohesive as they've been over the last 7 games. And that's just the regular season we're talking about. Once we get to the playoffs, we're really going to find out what Jonathan Kuminga is going to be about. And if he ends up helping the Warriors to a title, oh my goodness, sign him. And the Warriors are set for the next whatever years. If he ends up being a detriment, the longer the playoffs go, oh my goodness, the Warriors gave up the last 4 years hoping that Kuminga would become something. And he ultimately ended up hurting them all 4 years. You see how this situation can go either way in a very drastic direction? But yes, if it ends up not working out, then they're going to have to sign him to whatever deal it is that he wants. And then they're going to have to do a sign and trade to get somebody else in here that fits the rest of the Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler timeline. But that's about all I got for you tonight. The Warriors have 2 more remaining games this week. I expect them to take care of business, but we'll take it 1 game at a time. And I just want to do a little quick segment here because you guys in the comment section, sometimes you just leave some of the most amazing comments. I really and truly appreciate you. But there was a couple of comments that really stuck out from the previous video, and I'd like to just feature that and read that to you guys real quick. This one came from Dimension1111. I've been following Jimmy since he got drafted in Chicago. This is what I will tell you about Jimmy. 1. Jimmy is still not in shape. Jimmy can shoot the 3. Once he starts hitting those 3, it means his legs are back. 2. Jimmy plays only winning basketball. He can score at will when he wants to. Jimmy will get his teammates going before taking over. This is why playoff Jimmy exists. In the playoffs, Jimmy will take more shots and play harder defense. 3. Jimmy is too smart. He will attack the paint and draw so much attention that when he kicks out, he will hit the open shooter. 4. Jimmy never had a teammate like Steph, and even so took the Miami Heat 2 times to the NBA Finals twice with a bunch of undrafted players that has only played good when Jimmy was their teammate because he will elevate them to a new level. 5. I laughed when I saw people saying they didn't want Jimmy here. I knew exactly what Jimmy brings, and now everyone is seeing it. 6. Wait till Jimmy gets in shape. It will be the best 1 and 2 inside-out combo in the NBA. Jimmy hasn't taken over yet because there's no need yet, but he can. Warriors will give Jimmy his first ring. 5-1 Warriors, 1-5 Heat since the trade. Let's get that ring. Here's another brilliant comment from Douglas Wills 4624. I've also been following Jimmy since he was drafted, and I cannot stress enough that he has a few less obvious superpowers that people don't talk about, and are what elevates him from pretty good to awesome. 1. Offensive rebounds. The guy is a monster on the offensive glass. He's about 200 offensive rebounds from being number 2 all-time among shooting guards. If you want to call him a small forward, fine. He'll still finish top 20 all-time. But to give you an idea, his offensive rebound percent is 5.6% for his career. LeBron is 3.6%. Paul Pierce was 2.8%. Melo was 5.2%. He's just unreal at it, and has only gotten better in recent years. Since going to Miami, he's been at 6.6%. It's an incredibly valuable skill, especially from a smaller guy. Number 2, he just doesn't turn the ball over. Very, very, very few people average 6+ assists and fewer than 2 turnovers per game. His turnover percent is under 10% for his career. His assist percent is 21%. Since he went to Miami, those numbers are 9.8% and 27.5%. That's a ratio on par with LeBron James. So thank you for those amazing comments. Keep the great comments coming, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, until next time.